Hi, welcome back to Hack a Week. We're back with part 2 of the Parallax Elev8 quadcopter build. In a little bit higher resolution today, I might add. Hack a Week upgraded its video equipment here. I have a new Canon camera that I really love, so a little plug for them. Anyway, last week we built the motor assemblies and the booms, and we put the props on there. By the way, those are counter-rotating, and I forgot to mention they are directional. We'll go over that in a bit. Make sure you got that right before we move on too much further. We're also going to wire up the ESCs, the electronic speed controls. See how these have the same color wire on the outputs? And lots of people ask, why didn't I label these? Well, that kind of answers that. And later we'll show you, well, in part 3 we'll show you how to hook these up for proper rotation. It's just a matter of switching one of any two wires and then it will do its thing that it needs to do. These will connect to the Hoverfly board, and this is what keeps our craft nice and stable. It's basically like a autopilot, so to speak. It's got an accelerometer on board and some other goodies, and it can help our craft fly the way we want it to because it receives inputs from the receiver, the RC receiver, and then outputs it to the motor, changes the speed of things and lets it tilt and all that. So that's going to be mounted up today. So like I said, today it's going to be the mechanical build. We're going to put it all together. It'll be a finished thing ready to install a receiver in and program the ESCs, which we will get to in part 3. Right now, we need to get to work building this thing. So let's go. Let's get started. Okay, let's review here for a minute. When we put these together last time, I didn't really mention that the props actually have two different pitches, and I hope you can see the difference in the video here. One pitches one way, one pitches the other. Make sure that you pair them up so that the two red checkered booms have the same pitch prop. Now let's move on to the main body where everything is going to mount. Here's the drawing right here that we need to put together real quick. So we see here we have a top piece that's got 4 spacers on it. This is the top piece, and in fact there is some writing on there. There it is, Elev8 from Parallax. Anyway, let's put that together now. So we're going to put the screws which way? Up through the bottom because we want the letters up. So let's do that. Get them all threaded on and then we'll tighten them up and move on to the bottom part where we are going to mount the booms to. That'll be fun. It's going to start to look like a quadcopter then. Nice and snug. Alright, that takes care of the top. Let's set that aside and go back to the ESCs. These are now going to get some of these connectors soldered to them, and we have a male and a female connector that go together. Ooh, watch out, there they go, they docked in space. There we go. See that little pocket? That needs solder in it, and then the wire will insert into that, and we solder the whole thing together. So what I think I'm going to do is just hold this piece in this alligator clip and then just move the wire out a little bit so I can push them together like that. There we go. And I'll start out by applying some heat to this with it off from the wire, and we'll get a little bit of solder down into that pocket first. Remember to get the metal you're trying to solder hot enough to melt the solder. That's all we need, just that little bit. And tin this wire a little and also preheat it. Just help the whole thing go together a little better. Now if we just put these two together, we can manage to keep this all in frame. I just kind of squeeze the alligator clips on the third hand together as I heat these up. You can see the solder start to flow. Oh, I'm going a little crooked there. What I'm after is to try to keep a lot of the solder off from the outside part of it. I don't really want that. We're going to repeat that for all of the wires on the ESCs. Let's jump over to one of the motors real quick, and we'll solder up one of those, and then we'll link them together with one of the connectors there, and you can see how all that works. Now I need to get a male end on this one. Let's go ahead and clip that in. We'll tin this up just a bit. Let's get this warmed up and pre-tinned just a little. This will take a pretty fair amount of heat. There's a lot of metal there that's trying to heat sink everything away. I suppose I could clip that wire back just a little bit. There's a little bit of a bare spot showing, just for the aesthetics if nothing else. Make it look a little bit better. But there we go. There's the one for the motor. This is where we get out the heat shrink. On the motor side, bring the heat shrink material to right at the edge of that collar. Right in there, about halfway up the connector. On the male side, you'll want to take the heat shrink all the way to the end, possibly just a tiny bit past the end. So we'll cut a piece long enough to do that. It should be about probably 14 millimeters, maybe 13 millimeters. That would be about a ½ inch. Go ahead and put that on there and just set the piece of heat shrink pretty much flush with the end. I'm just going to use the soldering iron here for a little heat real quick to shrink this up and show you what I mean. A mini heat gun would be really nice right now. So see, now we have enough around there so that when it is connected with the other one, we won't have bare wires. We don't want wires shorting out into each other. That's our objective here. So on this side, you can cut a pretty short piece, maybe 10 millimeters or about 3/8 of an inch long, and take that right down to the collar. That's a little crooked. I want to keep the edge as straight as I can. There we go. Now let's put that on and shrink that piece up right in that position. Okay, now let's plug them together and you'll see what I mean. How everything is pretty well covered over right now. There's no real bare places as I wait for the autofocus. There it is. See, nice and clean connection, can be pulled apart easy later. Let's keep going on the soldering and do all of them. Seems to work easier just pushing the wire in there by hand. Now that all the ends are soldered up, we can finish up with that heat shrink, and I've decided to make a little cutting board template here so I know how long I want to cut these. I want it to go to the end and be on the insulation just a little bit. So everything for the blue wires gets cut to that length. We'll put a B next to that for blue, and then the red ones, they can be pretty short. They only need to go from about here to about there. So, pretty short piece. Let's cut some heat shrink up. Where's my X-Acto? Let's get squared off to begin with. Be careful with that X-Acto blade. Scary. There we go, all ends heat shrinked. So when we connect these later, they'll just connect up like this. Any which way you want to connect them. Just go ahead and connect them up. When we mount everything to the chassis and all that, that's what's going to happen. And Then at some point in time when we get the ESCs programmed to make these go one way or the other, you just simply pick any two wires and you switch them like so, and I guess that will reverse the direction. Pretty cool. Anyway, we'll get to that later. Now we're going to mount all of this to the center chassis and tuck in all these wires everywhere. Next up, we will build the body and boom section right here. So here's the bottom. The writing is on this side. I'm going to flip that over. That way when I look at the bottom of the copter, I can see Elev8, Parallax, and all that logo fun stuff. And a boom will go on here like this, but it will have the landing gear as so. Let's see, there we go. You can see right there. So that's how that'll go together, and a screw will go right through that and up through the actual boom and into a spacer, one of the 5/8 inch long spacers. And here they are. I have 8 of those. I have 8 screws, and there's 3 other screws left over in here that are longer. Don't mix those up. Oh, sorry, 4. There's 4. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Anyway, I digress. So there are 4 screws for the booms and 4 spacers. And you Monty Python fans out there can stop giggling now. Let's get this boom onto this bottom. Come on, you can do it. You have to make sure the wires inside are out of the way, because remember you're basically running a screw through an electrical conduit at this point. And I'm having a little trouble with this one. I got a wire in the way. So maybe if I just twist the ends a little and then see if I can work it through. There it comes. Okay. So that's that screw. Ah, you know what? I see right now that's where the longer screws go. Right in there. Alright, I should have looked on the sheet. The spec sheet tells me just what size screw to use. So there's a lesson for me to eat my own words. RTFM. Look it up. That's better. Put a spacer on top of there, one of the 5/8 spacers. Now we take one of these length screws and put it through the inboard side, lined up with the hole in the other end, the far end of the boom, and pokes through the same dimension. How about that? Okay, we'll hold those with some pliers gently. Doesn't take much. Remember, you're tightening into nylon, so don't try to put it together like a really tight bolt. That's good. Just good and tight. And we'll do that one. And then we repeat that whole thing 4 times. Now, opposite a red one, I'm going to put a black one. Opposite. And then, of course, the other red one will go here or here, and they're paired like this. Black, red, paired like that. Okay, let's go. Now we'll get all the ESCs hooked up in their temporary configuration, mind you. So bear in mind you'll need to get at these wires when you do all of the programming of the ESCs. It would be really nice if I had all that stuff to do that right now in this video, but I don't, as I mentioned. So it's still a good opportunity right now to figure out where the heck you're going to put all these, all 4 of them. So you can get creative with ways that you can mount them on here. There are some wire ties and things like that that come with the kit that you can get a little creative with. Just bear in mind that if you have to change one out, try to keep it simple. You know, think in terms of maintenance as well as just building the thing always. So that doesn't look too bad to me, something like that. And then what that does is collect all of our power requirements right at the very middle of the device, which is handy. Now they all converge right here in the middle, so we can have one solid connection going right to the battery from all 4 ESCs. Let's drop down in altitude here and take a look at what's going on the whole bottom chassis now that I've got all of the ESCs there. And I think you can see what's happening. I've wire tied all of them all the way around right here, and then brought all of the positive and negatives together in nice little bundles. One there and one there. Now I'll join all these together and solder them into one nice big twisted connection, and then bring this wire in and connect this up to one of those blue connectors, I think, and got some black wire for ground, and then we'll make a connection for the battery, which already has those connectors on it. Now I've taken a yellow 12 to 10 gauge crimp connector and pushed out the inner part. You just give it a push with a screwdriver and make sure you secure this on something and don't poke a hole through yourself. And that'll be really handy for joining this to this. Just put it in there and solder it up and see if I can get some of the wires, or maybe all of them, crammed into there and solder it on that end. Otherwise I'll just have to put a lot of solder on here, a lot of solder on here, and then just plow it on and then heat shrink it. That may work too, but I'm going to try to use this. All right, it is small enough. This is going to crank up the heat, suck it up good. I'm going to turn my iron up to about 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Feed a little solder in there to help wick the heat into everything, and just let it cook for a minute till it gets warm enough till I can melt solder on, there it is, on the connector. I'll start feeding some in here and it'll work its way in. I really want to get this soldered up super solid. Really, really good connection between all these wires and this connector. If you don't have the connector, just really tin up the wires heavily and then use the third hand to hold it together. Get a good solder connection, that's the bottom line on this one. Both pieces soldered now. Let's put a piece of heat shrink over everything. Big piece. Next up, we're going to mount the Hoverfly to this plastic piece here with all of this hardware. There's some little rubber grommets, washers, etc. And this is the plastic piece that it mounts to. Here are the little grommets that go in, and there's the washers and screws. So let's get the Hoverfly out and put the little rubber grommets in first. We have to poke those through the holes on the circuit board. All 4 rubber thingies mounted. We put it on the board like that, and it's a washer and a screw. Into the board. Next up is the cover. It's made of red plexiglass. It has a protective paper on each side, and we need to peel that off. A little X-Acto in the corner helps. This is laser cut, so you might have a little bit of paper stuck behind somewhere. If like right here in the middle of things like that. Take the time to pick all that out. You can always do that later. We'll just move along right now and peel the other side. There we go. Now this will go on top of here and stand off on these spacers with these screws. So we'll start with a screw inserted there into a spacer, and we'll do that all the way around. And we'll have those ready to slide down onto that board It'll go through the board and then mount into these 4 pre-threaded posts. They're all in there now. There's a hole here that says status, and that needs to line up with this little LED right here. So right here on the receiver port, you'll want that to point over here where it says receiver port on the other side. So we'll just put this onto the plastic piece now, and the screws should all line up there okay. And then we'll just kind of hold it together like a cheeseburger and flip it over, and then thread these through the black plastic by giving them a spin, because they won't push right through there. You need to thread through. All the screws are through now, through the black plastic, even all the way across the back. Now there's a little light tube. It's a little piece of clear plastic that comes with the kit. That will go right here into the hole marked status, and it just helps for the light to come from the LED that's pretty much down below it, I guess. It's a little out of alignment, but it's close enough to light that thing up, and that gives us the status of whether or not the helicopter is active or not. Okay, notice the orientation of the booms. 2 reds, 2 blacks. So I've got it setting that way just to make it a little easier when I put the brains on later. This is all assembled now with the screws all the way through, and the little light tube that's in there, I had to shorten that just a little bit so that it would fit well, and you push it in flush on the top, and that's what holds it in place. So that whole assembly, screws, spacer, bottom plate, all will be mounted to this plate, but first this needs to mount to the bottom with some screws on these spacers that are pre-threaded. We will be using the black screws that are left. All these little black screws go in those holes. So let's do that. You know, I flipped this around the other way because the ESCs all have their leads coming off this side of the chassis, and right here is the ESC port. So I think I'll put this on this way so that that port is facing toward those. That's about it on the build for now. We've got all the booms mounted to the chassis, and there goes the battery, and the brains are mounted up on the top, and we'll get into the wiring and the programming of the electronic speed controls down in here, the ESCs, on the next video. Now it looks like a quadcopter, all the pieces all together, ready to go. So, like I said, we just have some wiring to do. We got to get a radio and a receiver and then plug it all in, and then we can program the ESCs. Don't have a radio and receiver yet. Got to put together some cash for that. If you want to help out with that, you can donate on my donate page. I'll leave a link down below in the video description. Would really appreciate that. Anything you can help out with or not. That's about it then for this week, and in part 3 we will program this thing and get the prop spinning, and I'll be sure to put on the safety goggles that came with the kit, because you know, we all know you gotta protect your eyeballs. Wow, double wrapped for freshness. Protect the eyeballs from the quadcopter blades. So until next time, keep on hacking and wear your safety glasses.